Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I would like to join my panelists to say thank you to IDSA to invite me to start a very important conference. And I'm very honored to speak on a very complicated topic that Professor Yuji have already said. It's about ocean management. Ocean management in Indo-Pacific is really a big topic because you have a really big sea with rich resources. So that's why I would like to capture on the very centers of the Indo-Pacific, which is the South China Sea. The South China Sea, why it need to manage? Because it is a sea of resources. We have an estimation from International Energies of the United States to state that the South China Sea is one of the biggest areas that have high potential on oil and gas resources, and even higher than Europe in total. And then we also have the resources of fish. It provides a great tons of feed per kilometer a year. It provides the nutrition for kind of 100 million people. Maybe 100 million people, when I'm speaking here, is nothing because you have really big population, but it's really meaning a lot for South China Sea littoral state. And then, because of the sea, thanks to the sea, we are one of the biggest fishery industry in the world. We also have a most busiest maritime route. It's passed through Malacca Strait, go up to the East Asia, and it contains the golden oil for the economy, fuel the economy of all the economy in the regions. And then it have strategic positions. Let's look at the map. If you see in the map, it contains half of the sea exit to the sea lane communication of China. So that's why it's very important to China, and let alone to other small country in the regions. Unfortunately, we don't have such fortune. We have a sea of big resources, but we also have a sea of dispute. First, we have territorial dispute. It was about the paracels and the Spratly groups. And we also have the maritime dispute. If you apply the convention on the law of the sea, you can see that the line close to the coastline of the state almost at the baseline, that almost all the baseline was identified in compliance with the convention. And then from the convention provided that every coastal state have entitled to at least 200 nautical miles for EEZ, that's the exclusive economic zone and continental shelf. And then the same wide is the minimum of the continental shelf. And you can see that different line in different color indicate the EEZ and the continental shelf of the coastal state. And everyone share the equal share that provided in the UNCLOS. And then I'm really so sympathy with what has been explained by Professor Yuji, that China have the 9-dash line, which has been provided for since 1948. I actually can claim that the 9 has long before that, even in 1914. But unfortunately, we are waiting for the meaning of the line. Because without the meaning of the line, we don't know how to solve the dispute. If you look at the map, it covers a lot in the South China Sea. And if you would like to respect Chinese rights, we'd like to know what you want to claim. Professor Yuji have just provided a very interesting story. When Suharno have a story, with leadership of Chinese, and the leader of Chinese have confirmed that they have claimed nothing except the island within the line and the adjacent water. But how much are the adjacent? We really would like to know. And then he said that, of course, UNCLOS is younger, 35 years old than the 9-dash line. That's totally true. But then, at least, a line should be based on a certain legal basis. And we really would like to what kind of legal basis. Before UNCLOS, we live still in a rule-based society. We have a certain customary international law that we comply with. And certain country before UNCLOS would like to have a fishery field, and therefore they claim for fishery tradition right. But that will exist. That will exist the existence after UNCLOS came to existence. Before now, every country have 200 for fishing, for hydrocarbon resources, so they no longer claim the traditional rights like before. We know that China also a member of the convention, so China have two ways to claim their right. In compliance with the convention, have the EEZ and continental shelf, or still based on the old line. Of course, the two way is opened, but we just would like to know exactly what they want to have. Otherwise, I just have to guess from their practice. And if you look at, there's some rectangle that I put here. It's actually the 9 block that China claimed, and the 9 block is actually well located within the continental shelf of Vietnam. So what does it mean? If you look at the continental shelf of China, it limits, it's limit here. And then if you look down here, it's really far away from the mainland of China, either from Hainan Island or the mainland. And then there's nothing to explain except rely on the 9-dash line. That means the 9-dash line may be a basic to claim hydrocarbon resources, which is really close to the coastline of the other countries. Vietnam is not only one case, it happened to Philippines as well in the Red Bank, and also to Malaysia in the same shore, which is underneath over the sea level, but still faced with the claim of China. The dispute was that, and then what we would like to looking for is that the clarification of the claim, so that at least we know how much is the overlapping, and you know how to avoid to overlap the claim and the jurisdiction right and sovereign right of the other state in the same dispute. And then from the sea of resources, from the sea of dispute, we move to the sea of potential conflict. It is true that not every conflict as a result of the maritime or sovereignty dispute, but big as it be, the South China Sea is there, is the busiest sea, and with a lot of maritime claim, with a lot of activity to enforce the jurisdictional right. So you have the recent most collides between a warship of Chinese and the one of the US. We have the impeccable incidents, EP3, and we also face with unilateral fishing regulations. What is the consequences of unilateral regulation? Because the regulation covers the vast area in the South China Sea, and sometimes it causes incident toward the fishing vessels. In the picture, you can see that a fishing vessel of Vietnam get burned in the water, which they also believe that belong to their traditional fishing field. Moving forward from what I have been said, so really we need manage. We really to manage how to exploit the resources in a sustainable way and to ensure stability, peace in this sea. We have the South China Sea. I just capture again a picture of the South China Sea. And in the corner here, we have an area that Vietnam and China share with. It has a name, a Gulf of Tonkin. And in the Gulf of Tonkin, luckily, the two countries have concluded the maritime boundary, which is the line in the middle. And then in addition to the line, the maritime delimitation line, we have the zone covered by the dot line. Here is the joint fishing zones. That means, in addition to a boundary, Vietnam and China will successfully enter into a kind of ocean management to manage fishing resources in the Gulf. And until now, it can be considered one of the first cooperation between China and the other country in the field of resources. The other corner of the South China Sea, please look down at the map at the south, where Vietnam sharing the maritime zone with some other countries like Malaysia and Indonesia. And here we also have a model of joint development. The orange area, very thin one and long one, indicate the overlapping maritime zone between Malaysia and Vietnam, and the claim of Malaysia and Vietnam was based both on international law, how to measure the continental shelf from their coastline, and then as a result, the two claims overlapping with each other, and the two countries decided to put the overlapping area into joint development, and as a consequence, We jointly developed the area, shared the benefits, and so far until now, it was one of the most successful model because it's quick, it's simple, but it brings benefit for both countries. So learning from that, it's quite easy to talk. How can we apply the similar model to the rest of the South China Sea to manage to exploit the resources in a sustainable way and peaceful way? Yes, of course. Yesterday, we have a question from another distinguished Chinese professor that why Vietnam just invite US or India to take a joint development, a joint exploitation in the South China Sea, not China. We are more than welcome, of course. But then, first of all, we need to work on in which area that belong to which jurisdiction. In the map that I indicate here, if you look at the 9-dash line, it may cover 60% of Vietnamese continental shelf and EEZ. It covers 75% of those of the Philippines, 85% of Brunei, 80% of Malaysia, and then 25% of Indonesia. So if we don't have any formal interpretation from China on the meaning of the line, then how can we start where the zone that we can enter into joint development the resources in the South China Sea? That is a big difficulty, and that's why it still hinder any model for resources management in the South China Sea today. Turning to the other part, dispute management. When I'm talking dispute management, I'm talking about how can we clarify the claim, how can we solve a dispute. Of course, I'm quite optimistic when I'm saying that. Of course, because I'm also quote a 3-no principle learning from the paper of Professor Yu Ji, because China have 3-no principle: no participation, no response, and no implementations toward any judicial. Not from me, it's on his paper. Sorry, I put from you. And a 3-no principle is towards judicial methods, and because in the whole world, judicial methods, settling a dispute before a court or arbitration can be considered as peaceful means. That means when the two parties cannot settle by themselves, they can seek for an objective of a third party. But then with the 3-no principle, one door is closed. And then the second door, in any sport game, we have an arbitrator. We need to play the game according to the arbitrator. And in this dispute, we have the law. Unfortunately, different parties based on different law and have different interpretation. We have just heard Professor Yuan Ji said that China based their 9-dash line on the law before UNCLOS. Sure, but which law is it? We really would like to know. And then the last one is the existence of this disputable term. I'm sorry, Professor Yuan Ji. In your presentation, you said that the parallel is dispute between Vietnam and China. How happy I am. Because it was the first time I can hear that. Usually in negotiation table, the word indisputable has been emphasized to refute the existence of any dispute. So how can we solve it without any existence of a dispute? Then, dispute management, no, it's not possible. So my last hope is turn for conflict management. Conflict management can be taken. I'm so honored to hear the presentation from the ambassador at the first presentation. I'm so admired the IORA when they can develop so many activity, there's so many cooperations, and then result in a cooperation between among member party. Here in the South China Sea, I just try to map out different layers, 3 layers that the member party can cooperate with each other. First, dialogue, talk, easiest. Then second, activities. And then the third one, we build a stable organization, institutions. Dialogue, we are willing to talk. That has been confirmed by Professor Ng Ji. Everyone would like to talk to maintain peace and stability in the regions. So that's good. Activities, we also have certain activities that serve as a practice in the regions. We have RECAP, we have 16 members to work against piracy in the regions, which we have Australia, China, India, Japan, and 8 ASEAN countries are members. We're sharing information. That's why the piracy situation in Strait of Malacca has reduced significantly recently. That is our success. And then we also have the joint activity of littoral state. including the assistance of Japan and India along the Strait of Malacca. We also have the Jiangxi Fusion Center sharing the information. There are all the best practices. And then from that, we can learn that before the concept of Indo-Pacific Ocean, we have Indian Ocean Naval Symposium, and then we have Western Pacific Naval Symposium. Now is the time for us to turn two into one, or at least we can learn best practice from each other. Everyone talking about code of conduct. Even India now discussing a code of conduct on how to behave in the land boundary with China, isn't it? Code of conduct is the thing that everyone think about when we face a conflict situation, but we haven't have a law enough to regulate. In the South China Sea, we also work on a code of conduct, but at the moment, we only have the agreement of China to have initiated the formal consultation, not negotiation yet. We do hope that this year going to be start negotiation. Before that, it's also very encouraging because before that, China always insist that the time is not ripe yet. And then we also have a code of unalert encounter at sea, which developed by Western Pacific Naval Symposiums. And the code have not endorsed by the member yet. But this year is the year that China will chair the symposiums, and we do hope that China will take the lead to make the code become endorsed. If you look at the two symposiums, you can see that so many members actually have a membership in both of them. Because we share the common interests, and because the South China Sea is not only belong to the littoral state. I just quote again because Indian Ocean is not only belong to Indian. And then because so many people share the same interests, so we really need a joint hand from the other. India, for example, with the lead in Indian Ocean Naval Symposium, can share their best practice to the South China Sea. And by that way, we hope that we can have a better conflict management in the South China Sea. Thank you for your attention.